Hello, my name is Ben Townsend, and in this Safe Feature presentation, we are going to be discussing containers. Let's start with what is a container. A container is a single label on the outside of the box representing all of the items inside the box. In this screenshot that we have here, we have labels representing all the items inside the box all over the outside of the box. And this is a bad setup because in order to process any items in this box, you have to scan every label for every item on the outside. With a container, we have one label representing every item inside that box. So let's get started and see how we enable and use this container features in the Safe software system. So I'm going to log into the system here. And the first thing we have to do is enable containers. They are not on by default. So you'll go to Settings, Organization over on the left, scroll all the way down this main menu, and the second option from the bottom is Use Containers. So by enabling them, we have now turned on containers. Now, let's take a look at really what is a container in the system. We're calling it a container, but it's actually just a storage location. However, it's a very significant difference between a standard storage location. So don't get confused with the fact that I'm calling a container a storage location. A container has several additional properties that make it a little bit different than a standard storage location, even though I'm storing them inside of here. So in this scenario here, I've created several containers underneath the containers area. Now, the additional properties of a container that make it very important is number one, containers can be created on the fly from the item entry screen, and we'll show you that in just a moment. All right. The other major importance is that a general user can create one of these containers on the fly. So it doesn't have to be an org admin that does it. It can be a general user adding items. They can containerize all of these items and put a single label on the outside of the package. So now that we basically know what a container is and it has been enabled, let's see it in practice. So I'm going to go over to my recent cases on the left, and I'm going to bring up a case that I created just a little bit ago. And we notice that this case has 20 items in it. So let's go to the Items tab. And this is a classic scenario for using containers. I have 20 different pill bottles that have been brought in, and I do need to enter all 20 of these pill bottles as individual items. They should be packaged that way, all right? So I have 20 items in here, and I can even see that all 20 of these items are stored in what I call a temp locker TL1. And so that's great. These items are all sitting in that temporary locker, but at this point they are individual items. So what does it look like to containerize them? I'm going to select all 20 items, and this is where the real beauty of a container kicks in. We now, because we've enabled containers, have a new option in the menu here called Add to Container. So this allows me to containerize these items. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, this is where I can create the container name on the fly. So I'm going to create a container, and I'm going to call it 01234. All right. Now the thing about a container is it will make it be a unique name in here. If I've already got a container called that, I cannot create it. All right. And so at this point, I'm actually okay with that. I've created the container. I'm going to click OK. And now that I've done that, you'll notice that all of these items are now in a container that I just created. So this could be me as the org admin doing this work, or this could have been the officer. But here's another important option over here is you'll see this little print icon. This is what allows me to bring up the label to print out the container label. So you don't have to go into storage locations to either generate the location name or container, or to even print it out. So this is where your general user could print out this container label and put it on the outside of the package. Now keep in mind, yes, that user will print out ultimately 21 labels in my scenario here. 20 labels that will go on every one of these pill bottles. They should enter these pill bottles, print out labels for them, tag each one of them, put them in the package, seal the package, and then print out the container label that is on the outside of it. Now there are a lot of people that will not train their item entry users to do the containers. Maybe this is a function of the org admin. So when these items come into the temporary locker, I will want to verify the 20 items, and then I will package them and put the container label on the outside. So now that I have a package in my hand with 20 items inside of it, the container label is on the outside, What do we do with this container? So there's another additional feature inside the system called storage location move over here on the left. This was added with the advent of the container feature. So when I go into storage location move, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to find that container that I just built a moment ago. So we're going to go into my containers folder, and then inside of here will be the container that I built just a moment ago, and there's the container right there. Now I want to move this container into my evidence room. It's no longer going to be left in a temporary locker or a container area. I want to move it into the evidence room. So in my scenario here, I'm going to put this container on shelf A. So by simply selecting where is the container now and where do I want to move it, and also, by the way, notice here this option to apply chain of custody entries for all the items being moved. I want to leave that enabled because when I move this storage location, I want it to show that the chain of custody on the item has also been affected. So at this point in time now, I'm going to go ahead and select, one second here, let's do this, and now I'm going to hit save. And this does something very important. It's going to take that entire container and now move it into shelf A, and it's done. If I go back to my storage locations and look in containers, there is no longer a container there, but if I go down to shelf A, you will see there is the container or the storage location that has been moved. Another very important thing happens here at this point. Now that the container has been moved into an actual storage location, that container can no longer be edited. I can't add items into the container. I cannot remove items from that container. It's a locked container at this point. So now, not only do I have my container with my label on the outside, I've moved it into a spot in my evidence room that I'm happy with. Now let's look at actually processing transactions based on that label. So let's go over to the scan option on the left side of my screen, and one of the new options you now have in this screen is to go up here and say, I want to scan a location barcode, which could also be a container barcode. Keep that in mind, containers are locations, same thing. So when I go to this screen and I scan my barcode, now when I enter the barcode, notice how it brings up all 20 items inside of there. I didn't scan all 20 items. I simply scanned the container label or the location label on the outside of the package, and then it brings everything up for processing. So if for whatever reason I wanted to check out this entire box to go to court, I can go in now and say I want to select all items, and you do have to select every item. On this screen here, it's not going to just display one thing. It's going to display every item in it, and you're going to have to go in and say, yes, I'm checking out all of these items, or for whatever transaction you're performing, it's going to bring everything up on the screen. You select everything, and then you perform your transaction, whatever that transaction may be. So the last transaction we want to cover is the actual inventory or the discrepancy report. How does it work when I have containers that are a part of an inventory? Well, let's first of all, before we get into the actual inventory, let's go back to storage locations, and I want to cover again, my container is now in shelf A. When you do an inventory, you cannot just do an inventory on a container. Why would you ever do that? Because all you're going to do is scan one barcode and the inventory would say, hey, we believe every item to be inside of that container. There's no way that we're not scanning every barcode on every item. We have to assume when we scan the container, it is perfectly packaged and sealed, and we're accounting for every item inside of it. So when I do my inventory in just a moment, I actually am going to do an inventory on the parent location, which is shelf A. That contains the container, but keep in mind here, I'm also accounting when I do shelf A, I've got rows 2, 3, and 4 here also that are going to be a part of that inventory. So let's go into the Tools Discrepancy Report, and let's start a new inventory. I'm going to call this Test Container, that's the name of it, and then I'm going to scan the barcode for that parent location so that we can start processing it. There is my scan, and I'm going to click Start. So at this point now, we have started the process of the inventory for that parent location. Now, I don't even know what these results are going to look like because I've got possibly a lot of items in all of these locations, and I'm not going to scan every one of them. But let's just simply go in and scan the actual container barcode itself, and there is the barcode that's on the container. So at this point in time, I've simply told the inventory, I've scanned the container inside of it. That's all I'm going to do. I want to run the report and see what this thing looks like. And so now it's processing, it's running a report, it's finding all of the discrepancies, and there's not too many, but the fact is there are 14 items in that location that I didn't scan. And I understand that. They're all in, it looks like they're in the root of shelf A, and the reason I didn't scan them is because I didn't have barcodes to scan. But the really important thing is that container and those 20 items inside the container did not show up as an error on my discrepancy report, because by scanning that container barcode, I'm telling the discrepancy report, hey, one label representing 20 items, simply show all of those items. Now, there is one potential problem with using a container. And even though it's a potential problem, I think it's a problem you're going to have to accept, because this box is sealed. The problem is that when you scan a container label, you are telling the software, I'm going to assume that everything inside of that box is correct. And even more importantly, you may be generating chain of custody on items that you didn't physically look at. But I do believe in the end, you have to do it that way, because printing all of these labels on the outside of the box, as we discussed at the very beginning, is no better anyways, because you're scanning every label on the box and saying, I'm accounting for everything in that box. And we don't know that it's true. But the fact that the box is sealed is hopefully your ability to claim, I can't account for every item in that box. That's just a reality of the way that it is. Okay, well that sums up the container feature. I hope you understand after this presentation what's the purpose of a container, what are we trying to avoid, what are we trying to accomplish, how do you enable the container, adding items into a container and printing the container label, and then performing transactions, check-ins, check-outs, and also the discrepancy report. Thank you and have a great day.